Section 12 of the Arabian Nights Entertainments, Volume 4. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Beth Blakely. The Arabian Nights Entertainments, Volume 4. Translated by Jonathan Scott. Section 12. The Story of the Sisters Who Envied Their Younger Sister. Part 4. The princes went home, but neglected to speak of their adventure in meeting the emperor and hunting with him, and also of the honor he had done them by asking them to go home with him, yet did not the next morning fail to meet him at the place appointed. "Well," said the emperor, "have you spoken to your sister? And has she consented to the pleasure I expect of seeing you?" The two princes looked at each other and blushed. "Sir," said Bahman, "we beg your majesty to excuse us, for both my brother and I forgot." "Then remember today," replied the emperor, "and be sure to bring me an answer tomorrow." The princes were guilty of the same fault a second time, and the emperor was so good-natured as to forgive their negligence. But to prevent their forgetfulness the third time, he pulled 3 golden balls out of a purse and put them into Prince Bahman's bosom. "These balls," said he, smiling, "will prevent your forgetting a third time what I wish you to do for my sake, since the noise they will make by falling on the floor when you undress will remind you, if you do not recollect it before." The event happened just as the emperor foresaw, and without these balls the princes had not thought of speaking to their sister of this affair. For as Prince Bahman unloosened his girdle to go to bed, the balls dropped on the floor, upon which he ran into Prince Perviz's chamber. When both went into the Princess Parizade's apartment, and after they had asked her pardon for coming at so unseasonable a time, they told her all the circumstances of their meeting the emperor. The princess was somewhat surprised at this intelligence. "Your meeting with the emperor," said she, "is happy and honorable, and may in the end be highly advantageous to you, but it is very disagreeable and distrustful to me. It was on my account, I know, you refused the emperor, and I am infinitely obliged to you for doing so. I know by this your affection is equal to my own, since you would rather be guilty of incivility towards the emperor than violate the brotherly union we have sworn to each other. You judge right, for if you had once gone, you would insensibly have been engaged to leave me, to devote yourselves to him. But do you think it an easy matter absolutely to refuse the emperor what he seems so earnestly to desire? Monarchs will be obeyed in their desires, and it may be dangerous to oppose them. Therefore, if to follow my inclination I should dissuade you from showing the complaisance he expects from you, it may expose you to his resentment, and may render myself and you miserable. These are my sentiments, but before we conclude upon anything, let us consult the speaking bird, and hear what he says. He is penetrating, and has promised his assistance in all difficulties." The princess sent for the cage, and after she had related the circumstances to the bird in the presence of her brothers, asked him what they should do in this perplexity. The bird answered, "The princes your brothers must conform to the emperor's pleasure, and in their turn invite him to come and see your house." "But, bird," replied the princess, "my brothers and I love one another, and our friendship is yet undisturbed. Will not this step be injurious to that friendship?" "Not at all," replied the bird. "It will tend rather to cement it." "Then," answered the princess, "the emperor will see me." The bird told her it was necessary he should, and that everything would go better afterwards. Next morning the princes met the emperor hunting, who at as great a distance as he could make himself be heard, asked them if they had remembered to speak to their sister. Prince Bahman approached, and answered, "Sir, your majesty may dispose of us as you please. We are ready to obey you, for we have not only obtained our sister's consent with great ease, but she took it amiss that we should pay her that deference in a matter wherein our duty to your majesty was concerned. But if we have offended, we hope you will pardon us." "Do not be uneasy on that account," replied the emperor. "So far from taking amiss what you have done, I highly approve of your conduct, and hope you will have the same deference and attachment to my person, if I have ever so little share in your friendship." The princes, confounded at the emperor's goodness, returned no other answer but a low obeisance, to show the great respect with which they received it. The emperor, contrary to his usual custom, did not hunt long that day. Presuming that the princes possessed wit equal to their courage and bravery, he longed with impatience to converse with them more at liberty. He made them ride on each side of him, an honor which, without speaking of the principal courtiers who accompanied him, was envied by the Grand Vizier, who was much mortified to see them preferred before him. When the emperor entered his capital, the eyes of the people who stood in the crowds in the streets were fixed upon the 2 princes Bahman and Perviz, and they were earnest to know who they might be, whether foreigners or natives. All, however, agreed in wishing that the emperor had been blessed with 2 such handsome princes, and said, He might have had children as old if the queen, who had suffered the punishment of her misfortune, had been more fortunate in her lyings-in. The first thing that the emperor did when he arrived at his palace was to conduct the princes into the principal apartments, who praised without affectation, like persons conversant in such matters, the beauty and symmetry of the rooms, and the richness of the furniture and ornaments. Afterwards a magnificent repast was served up, and the emperor made them sit with him, which they at first refused, but finding it was his pleasure they obeyed. The emperor, who had himself much learning, particularly in history, foresaw that the princes, out of modesty and respect, would not take the liberty of beginning any conversation. Therefore, to give them an opportunity, he furnished them with subjects all dinner-time. But whatever subject he introduced, they showed so much wit, judgment, and discernment that he was struck with admiration. "Were these my own children," said he to himself, "and I had improved their talents by suitable education, they could not have been more accomplished or better informed." In short, he took such great pleasure in their conversation that after having sat longer than usual, he led them into his closet, where he pursued this conversation with them, and at last said, "I never supposed that there were among my subjects in the country youths so well brought up, so lively, so capable, and I never was better pleased with any conversation than yours. But it is time now we should relax our minds with some diversion, and as nothing is more capable of enlivening the mind than music, you shall hear a vocal and instrumental concert which may not be disagreeable to you." The emperor had no sooner spoken for them than the musicians, who had orders to attend, entered, and answered fully the expectations the princes had been led to entertain of their abilities. After the concerts an excellent farce was acted, and the entertainment was concluded by dancers of both sexes. The two princes, seeing night approach, prostrated themselves at the emperor's feet, and having first thanked him for the favors and honors he had heaped upon them, asked his permission to retire, which was granted by the emperor, who in dismissing them said, "I give you leave to go, but remember, I brought you to the palace myself only to show you the way. You will be always welcome, and the oftener you come, the greater pleasure you will do me." Before they went out of the emperor's presence, Prince Bahman said, "Sir, may we presume to request that your majesty will do us and our sister the honor to pass by our house, and rest and refresh yourself after your fatigue, the first time you take the diversion of hunting in that neighborhood? It is not worthy of your presence, but monarchs sometimes have vouchsafed to take shelter in a cottage." "My children," replied the emperor, "your house cannot be otherwise than beautiful and worthy of its owners. I will call and see it with pleasure, which will be the greater for having my hosts you and your sister, who is already dear to me from the account you give me of the rare qualities with which she is endowed. And this satisfaction I will defer no longer than tomorrow. Early in the morning I will be at the place where I shall never forget that I first saw you. Meet me, and you shall be my guides." When the Princes Bahman and Perviz had returned home, they gave the princess an account of the distinguished reception the emperor had given them, and told her that they had invited him to do them the honor, as he passed by, to call at their house, and that he had appointed the next day. "If it be so," replied the princess, "we must think of preparing a repast fit for his majesty, and for that purpose I think it would be proper we should consult the speaking bird. He will tell us perhaps what meats the emperor likes best." The princes approved of her plan, and after they had retired she consulted the bird alone. "Bird," said she, "the emperor will do us the honor tomorrow to come and see our house, and we are to entertain him. Tell us what we shall do to acquit ourselves to his satisfaction." "Good mistress," replied the bird, "you have excellent cooks. Let them do the best they can, but above all things, let them prepare a dish of cucumbers stuffed full of pearls, which must be set before the emperor in the first course before all the other dishes." "Cucumbers stuffed full of pearls!" cried Princess Parizadeh with amazement. "Surely, bird, you do not know what you say. It is an unheard of dish. The emperor may admire it as a piece of magnificence, but he will sit down to eat, not to admire pearls. Besides, all the pearls I possess are not enough for such a dish." "Mistress," said the bird, "do what I say, and be not uneasy about what may happen. Nothing but good will follow. As for the pearls, go early tomorrow morning to the foot of the first tree on your right hand in the park. Dig under it, and you will find more than you want." That night the princess ordered a gardener to be ready to attend her, and the next morning early led him to the tree which the bird had told her of, and bade him dig at its foot. When the gardener came to a certain depth, he found some resistance to the spade, and presently discovered a gold box about a foot square, which he showed the princess. "This," said she, "is what I brought you for. Take care not to injure it with the spade." When the gardener took up the box, he gave it into the princess's hands, who, as it was only fastened with neat little hasps, soon opened it, and found it full of pearls of a moderate size, but equal and fit for the use that was to be made of them. Very well satisfied with having found this treasure, after she had shut the box again, she put it under her arm and went back into the house, while the gardener threw the earth into the hole at the foot of the tree as it had been before. The princes, Bahman and Perviz, who as they were dressing themselves in their own apartments, saw the princess, their sister, in the garden earlier than usual, as soon as they could get out, went to her, and met her as she was returning, with a gold box under her arm, which much surprised them. "Sister," said Bahman, "you carried nothing with you when we saw you before with the gardener, and now we see you have a golden box. Is this some treasure found by the gardener, and did he come to tell you of it?" "No, brother," answered the princess. "I took the gardener to the place where this casket was concealed, and showed him where to dig, but you will be more amazed when you see what it contains." The princess opened the box, and when the princes saw that it was full of pearls, which though small were of great value, they asked her how she came to the knowledge of this treasure. "Brothers," said she, "if nothing more pressing calls you elsewhere, come with me and I will tell you." "What more pressing business," said Prince Perviz, "can we have than to be informed of what concerns us so much? We have nothing to do to prevent our attending you." The princess, as they returned to the house, gave them an account of her having consulted the bird, as they had agreed she should, and the answer he had given her, the objection she had raised to preparing the dish of cucumbers stuffed full of pearls, and how he had told her where to find this box. The princes and princess formed many conjectures to penetrate into what the bird could mean by ordering them to prepare such a dish, and after much conversation, though they could not by any means guess at his reason, they nevertheless agreed to follow his advice exactly. As soon as the princess entered the house, she called for the head cook, and after she had given him directions about the entertainment for the emperor, said to him, "Besides all this, you must dress an extraordinary dish for the emperor's own eating, which nobody else must have anything to do with besides yourself. This dish must be of cucumbers stuffed with these pearls." And at the same time she opened him the box, and showed him the pearls. The chief cook, who had never heard of such a dish, started back, and showed his thoughts by his looks, which the princess penetrating said, "I see you take me to be mad to order such a dish, which you have never heard of, and which one may say with certainty was never made. I know this as well as you, but I am not mad, and give you these orders with the most perfect recollection. You must invent and do the best you can, and bring me back what pearls are left." The cook could make no reply, but took the box and retired, and afterwards the princess gave directions to all the domestics to have everything in order, both in the house and gardens, to receive the emperor. Next day the two princes went to the place appointed, and as soon as the Emperor of Persia arrived the chase began, which lasted till the heat of the sun obliged him to leave off. While Prince Bahman stayed to conduit the emperor to their house, Prince Perviz rode before to show the way, and when he came in sight of the house, spurred his horse to inform the Princess Parizadeh that the emperor was approaching. But she had been told by some servants, whom she had placed to give notice, and the prince found her waiting ready to receive him. When the emperor had entered the courtyard and alighted at the portico, the princess came and threw herself at his feet, and the two princes informed him she was their sister, and besought him to expect her respects. The emperor stooped to raise her, and after he had gazed some time on her beauty, struck with her fine person and dignified air, he said, "The brothers are worthy of the sister, and she worthy of them, since if I may judge of her understanding by her person, I am not amazed that the brothers would do nothing without their sister's consent. But," added he, "I hope to be better acquainted with you, my daughter, after I have seen the house." "Sir," said the princess, "it is only a plain country residence, fit for such people as we are, who live retired from the great world. It is not to be compared with houses in great cities, much less with the magnificent palaces of emperors." "I cannot perfectly agree with you in opinion," said the emperor very obligingly, "for its first appearance makes me suspect you. However, I will not pass my judgment upon it till I have seen it all. Therefore, be pleased to conduct me through the apartments." The princess led the emperor through all the rooms except the hall, and after he had considered them very attentively and admired their variety, "My daughter," said he to the princess, "do you call this a country house? The finest and largest cities would soon be deserted if all country houses were like yours. I am no longer surprised that you take so much delight in it, and despise the town. Now let me see the garden, which I doubt not is answerable to this house." The princess opened a door which led into the garden, and the first object which presented itself to the emperor's view was the golden fountain. Surprised at so rare an object, he asked from whence that wonderful water, which gave so much pleasure to behold, had been procured. Where was its source, and by what art was it made to play so high, that he thought nothing in the world was to be compared to it? He said he would presently take a nearer view of it. The princess then led him to the spot where the harmonious tree was planted, and there the emperor heard a concert, different from all he had ever heard before, and stopping to see where the musicians were, he could discern nobody far or near, but still distinctly heard the music, which ravished his senses. "My daughter," said he to the princess, "where are the musicians whom I hear? Are they underground or invisible in the air? Such excellent performers will hazard nothing by being seen. On the contrary, they would please the more." "Sir," answered the princess, smiling, "they are not musicians, but the leaves of the trees your majesty sees before you, which form this concert, and if you will give yourself the trouble to go a little nearer, you will be convinced, and the voices will be the more distinct." The emperor went nearer, and was so charmed with the sweet harmony that he would never have been tired with hearing it, but that his desire to have a nearer view of the fountain of the yellow water forced him away. "Daughter," said he, "tell me, I pray you, whether this wonderful tree was found in your garden by chance, or was it a present made to you, or have you procured it from some foreign country? It must certainly have come from a great distance. Otherwise, curious as I am after natural rarities, I should have heard of it. What name do you call it by?" "Sir," replied the princess, "this tree has no other name than that of the singing tree, and is not a native of this country. It would at present take up too much time to tell your majesty by what adventures it came here. Its history is connected with the yellow water and the speaking bird, which came to me at the same time, and which your majesty may see after you have taken a nearer view of the golden water. But if it be agreeable to your majesty, after you have rested yourself and recovered the fatigue of hunting, which must be the greater because of the sun's intense heat, I will do myself the honor of relating it to you." "My daughter," replied the emperor, "my fatigue is so well recompensed by the wonderful things you have shown me, that I do not feel it the least. I think only of the trouble I give you. Let us finish by seeing the yellow water. I am impatient to see and admire the speaking bird." When the emperor came to the yellow water, his eyes were fixed so steadfastly upon the fountain that he could not take them off. At last, addressing himself to the princess, he said, "As you tell me, daughter, that this water has no spring or communication, I conclude that it is foreign, as well as the singing tree." "Sir," replied the princess, "it is as your majesty conjectures, and to let you know that this water has no communication with any spring, I must inform you that the basin is one entire stone, so that the water cannot come in at the sides or underneath. But what your majesty will think most wonderful is that all of this water proceeded but from one small flagon, emptied into this basin, which increased to the quantity you see by a property peculiar to itself, and formed this fountain." "Well," said the emperor, going from the fountain, "this is enough for one time. I promise myself the pleasure to come and visit it often. But now let us go and see the speaking bird." As he went towards the hall, the emperor perceived a prodigious number of singing birds in the trees around, filling the air with their songs and warblings, and asked why there were so many there and none on the other trees in the garden. "The reason, sir," answered the princess, "is because they come from all parts to accompany the song of the speaking bird, which your majesty may see in a cage in one of the windows of the hall we are approaching. And if you attend, you will perceive that his notes are sweeter than those of any of the other birds, even the nightingale." The emperor went into the hall, and as the bird continued singing, the princess raised her voice and said, "My slave, here is the emperor. Pay your compliments to him." The bird left off singing that instant, when all the other birds ceased also, and it said, "The emperor is welcome. God prosper him and prolong his life." As the entertainment was served on the sofa near the window where the bird was placed, the sultan replied as he was taking his seat, "Bird, I thank you, and am overjoyed to find in you the sultan and king of birds." As soon as the emperor saw the dish of cucumbers set before him, thinking it was stuffed in the best manner, he reached out his hand and took one, but when he cut it, was in extreme surprise to find it stuffed with pearls. "What novelty is this?" said he, "and with what design were these cucumbers stuffed thus with pearls, since pearls are not to be eaten?" He looked at the two princes and princess to ask them the meaning, when the bird, interrupting him, said, "Can your majesty be in such great astonishment at cucumbers stuffed with pearls, which you see with your own eyes, and yet so easily believe that the queen your wife was delivered of a dog, a cat, and a piece of wood?" "I believed these things," replied the emperor, "because the midwives assured me of the facts." "Those midwives, sir," replied the bird, "were the queen's two sisters, who, envious of her happiness in being preferred by your majesty before them, to satisfy their envy and revenge, have abused your majesty's credulity. If you interrogate them, they will confess their crime. The two brothers and the sister whom you see before you are your own children, whom they exposed, and who were taken in by the intendant of your gardens, who provided nurses for them and took care of their education." This speech of the birds presently cleared up the emperor's understanding. "Bird," cried he, "I believe the truth which you discovered to me. The inclination which drew me to them told me plainly they must be my own blood. Come then, my sons, come, my daughter, let me embrace you and give you the first marks of a father's love and tenderness." The emperor then rose, and after having embraced the two princes and the princess, and mingled his tears with theirs, said, "It is not enough, my children, you must embrace each other, not as the children of the intendant of my gardens, to whom I have been so much obliged for preserving your lives, but as my own children, of the royal blood of the monarchs of Persia, whose glory I am persuaded you will maintain." After the two princes and princess had embraced mutually with new satisfaction, the emperor sat down again with them and finished his meal in haste, and when he had done, said, "My children, you see in me your father. Tomorrow I will bring the queen your mother, therefore prepare to receive her." The emperor afterwards mounted his horse and returned with expedition to his capital. The first thing he did, as soon as he had alighted and entered his palace, was to command the Grand Vizier to seize the queen's two sisters. They were taken from their houses separately, convicted and condemned to be quartered, which sentence was put in execution within an hour. In the meantime, the Emperor Khusru Shah, followed by all the lords of his court who were then present, went on foot to the door of the great mosque, and after he had taken the queen out of the strict confinement she had languished under for so many years, embracing her in the miserable condition to which she was then reduced, said to her with tears in his eyes, "I come to entreat your pardon for the injustice I have done you, and to make you the reparation I ought, which I have begun by punishing the unnatural wretches who put the abominable cheat upon me, and I hope you will look upon it as complete, when I present to you two accomplished princes and a lovely princess, our children. Come and resume your former rank, with all the honors which you are due." All this was done and said before great crowds of people who flocked from all parts at the first news of what was passing, and immediately spread the joyful intelligence through the city. Next morning early, the emperor and the queen, whose mournful, humiliating dress was changed for magnificent robes, went with all their court to the house built by the intendant of the gardens, where the emperor presented the princes Bahman and Perviz and the princess Parizadeh to their enraptured mother. "These, much injured wife," said he, "are the two princes your sons, and this princess your daughter. Embrace them with the same tenderness I have done, since they are worthy both of me and you." The tears flowed plentifully down their cheeks at these tender embraces, especially the queen's, from the comfort and joy of having two such princes for her sons, and such a princess for her daughter, on whose account she had so long endured the severest afflictions. The two princes and the princess had prepared a magnificent repast for the emperor and queen and their court. As soon as that was over, the emperor led the queen into the garden, and showed her the harmonious tree and the beautiful effect of the yellow fountain. She had seen the bird in his cage, and the emperor had spared no panegyric in his praise during the repast. When there was nothing to detain the emperor any longer, he took horse, and with the princes Bahman and Perviz on his right hand, and the queen consort and the princess at his left, proceeded and followed by all the officers of his court, according to their rank, returned to his capital. Crowds of people came out to meet them, and with acclamations of joy ushered them into the city, where all eyes were fixed not only upon the queen, the two princes, and the princess, but also upon the bird, which the princess carried before her in his cage, admiring his sweet notes, which had drawn all the other birds about him, which followed him, flying from tree to tree in the country, and from one housetop to another in the city. The princes Bahman and Perviz and the princess Parizadeh were at length brought to the palace with this pomp, and nothing was to be seen or heard all that night but illuminations and rejoicings both in the palace and in the utmost parts of the city, which lasted many days and were continued throughout the empire of Persia, as intelligence of the joyful event reached the several provinces. End of section 12. Recording by Beth Blakely.